I have to be honest. If I knew that getting easily employed as a woman was afforded to me, especially as a black woman. I don't understand how black people talk about some white privilege. Are you serious? I had so many privileges given to me because I'm a woman and because I'm black. I had so many privileges given to me that white people would, there's no, I look at white privileges and I go, So, but if it wasn't so easy for me, I do believe with all my heart that I would have actively sought out a husband first.
People will make all sorts of preposterous claims if they think that it will benefit them.
Right.
What is astonishing is that white people fall for this. White people will agree that black people somehow created all the wealth of America and that we're benefiting from it. Well, wait, if black people are so astonishingly productive, why is Africa a mess? Why is Haiti a terrible mess? It's full of all these super productive black people. The black people who made the wealth of America, couldn't they make the wealth of Haiti too? No, none of this makes any sense. And also the very idea of white privilege. Iceland is still almost exclusively white. Now, presumably there's no white privilege in Iceland, right? But if you shipped in, a good 500,000 Somalis, all of a sudden, would the people of Iceland be so much better off because suddenly they have white privilege? No, Iceland would suffer terribly because of the arrival of 500,000 Somalis. It would be a miserable addition to that country and devastated. And yet, only by the presence of non-whites could they conceivably have white privilege. So by the definition of white privilege, they'd be better off if they had this devastating infusion to their population. Who in America thinks that white people would be much worse off if there were no non-whites here? If white privilege depends on the presence of non-whites, then if all non-whites were to disappear, would we suddenly be cast into this miserable state of not having white privilege? None of this makes any sense.
It doesn't make sense. And what about Asian privilege? Because I'm pretty sure the recent statistics that I've seen in wealth in America, Asian Americans who have only been here for the past decade own a pretty good majority of the wealth.
But yes, in terms of per capita income, household income, likelihood to be admitted to an Ivy League university, also crime rates, sexually transmitted disease rates, in all, by every measure of social success, Asians are doing better than whites.
Right.
And so, yes, your question is, okay, if whites are benefiting, if whites got what they have from white privilege, how come Asians have what they have? Is there some sort of unfair Asian privilege? But no, people don't think consistently in these terms. They would say, Asians work harder, Asians are smart, Asians have a good culture. But if whites are doing well, do we work hard? Do we have a good culture? No, it's privilege.
It's white privilege, right?
Yes. All of this stuff is completely incoherent. And that's why it's so easy to argue against these people who take these preposterous positions, because they're illogical, they make no sense, they have no historical grounding. And so I almost feel unfair when I'm debating some of these people because we're right and they're wrong.
Right. And I meant portion of the wealth. Asians own a good portion of the wealth in the United States.
As I like to say, the best red pill is reality. You just look around and you see that the facts on the ground simply do not match the explanations that we are constantly being force-fed. So anybody with two functioning eyes in his head realizes that diversity is not a strength, for example. Diversity is a source of enormous conflict. That's an obvious lie. Anybody with two functioning eyes in his head recognizes that blacks and whites do not behave in the same way, and that if there are more blacks in jail on a proportionate basis than whites, it's probably because they commit more crime, not because some bigoted police force is out there rounding up innocent black people and throwing them into jail. None of this stuff makes sense. Anybody who's gone to an integrated high school knows that black and white behavior is not by any means identical, and that if black people are more likely to be suspended, it's because they commit more suspendable offenses, not because some bunch of school administrators are culturally blind and are bigoted and are unfairly punishing blacks who don't deserve to be punished. There are so many obvious inconsistencies and stupidities that are part of the mainstream narrative that more and more people of absolutely average IQ are beginning to realize just what a bunch of baloney it is. And all of this is why the so-called alt-right, I think of it more as sort of a racial dissident movement. That is why people who see the truth are increasing in number and will continue to increase in number, because the truth is so obvious compared to the prevailing lies.
Right. I mean, I never and never will just hate or despise anyone because of the color of their skin. I never will just shy away from associating from someone just because of the color of their skin. But when I talk about these things, people think that I do. You know, when I hear it says through these studies that they're more likely to be locked up for the drug offenses because they're more likely to have previous criminal records. This is the reason for this. You know,
a couple of points to be made here. Where do we get the idea that black people are no more likely than white people to take drugs? We get that from self-reports. If
Right.
you ask black people and white people, how often do you take drugs? You get similar answers. However, if you test those answers against actual drug tests, you can detect drugs in urine, you can detect drugs in hair. You will find that blacks are far more likely to lie about this. 5, 6 times, sometimes even more likely to lie when you have these controlled tests. I don't believe the self-reports. I think that blacks probably are more likely to take drugs than whites. There's another aspect of this as well. You are charged with drug possession if you're picked up from some other crime. And if blacks, compared to whites, and as they are 12 to 15 times more likely to be arrested for robbery. When you're arrested for robbery and you have a reefer in your pocket, you're likewise going to be picked up for drug possession as well as for robbery. So that goes into the statistics as well. I do not think that the problem here is any kind of biased police action. You have a 9 times greater likelihood, if you are a black, of being arrested for drug use in the District of Columbia than a white guy. Is this because the District of Columbia, which is a police force that is run by blacks, has a majority of blacks, are they running around in some sort of biased, unfair way, picking on black people? Very unlikely, very unlikely. So
Because
first
of
of
the
all,
previous criminal record. Right.
well, it's not just that. I think that black drug use is considerably higher than white drug use. I think that blacks are simply more likely to lie. And this is brought out by, as I say, these independent tests in which you have populations in which there are urine tests or hair follicle tests that prove that black people are more likely to lie. You're arrested for robbery and you have a reefer in your pocket.